At 2:17 on a Thursday morning, Adrian Vale heard an instant camera eject a photograph from inside the locked cabinet across his studio. He had not touched the camera. He had not loaded it with film. Yet a gray square slid onto the shelf and began developing in the dark. The image showed Adrian's own apartment, the hall lamp burning, the bedroom door half open, and a glass of water beside the sink. In the corner, red numbers marked the exposure time. Friday, October 17th, 2:17 a.m., exactly 24 hours in the future. Adrian was visible near the bedroom, facing away from the lens. The photograph had been taken from inside his locked front door. The camera had arrived 6 hours earlier in a package with no stamp, courier label, or return address. Adrian restored damaged photographs for police archives, so unannounced equipment sometimes reached his studio. This parcel was different. The cardboard was dry despite the rain, and the tape had been cut and resealed from the inside. A single line was written beneath the camera in silver pencil. For Addie, when the hall light flickers twice. Only Adrian's father had called him Addie. Only his father knew the sentence about the hall light. Daniel Vale had used it as a warning during childhood blackouts. He had also been missing for 22 years. Adrian photographed the print, sealed the original in evidence plastic, and spent Thursday changing everything the image showed. He moved the hall lamp into storage. He closed the bedroom door and placed a chair beneath its handle. He poured the water away. At 1:58 Friday morning, the building's power failed. Adrian used the stored lamp because it was the only battery light he owned. A pipe knocked inside the wall and shook the chair away from the bedroom door. When Adrian checked the kitchen, a glass stood beside the sink. He had carried it there without thinking. At 2:17, the apartment matched the photograph down to the angle of the open door. A flash lit the front hall. No one was there. The camera ejected another print. This one was stamped Saturday at 2:17 a.m. The viewpoint had moved 12 feet deeper into the apartment. It looked down the hall from beside the kitchen, close enough to show dust on the floorboards. Adrian stood at the far end holding the first photograph. Behind him, the bedroom door was open again. Something pale occupied the darkness beyond it, too narrow to be a person and too deliberate to be glare. Adrian measured both pictures. The unknown photographer was not approaching from outside. The first image began at the entrance. The second had crossed the living room. Whatever took the photographs was already inside, moving one room closer each night. Adrian decided the photograph could not come true if the apartment no longer resembled it. He removed the kitchen table, covered the hall mirror, and spent Friday night at his friend Kira Bell's conservation lab. At 1:40, a fire alarm forced everyone outside. Rain flooded the lab's loading bay, ruining a box of nitrate film Adrian had promised to protect. He rushed home for dry storage. The building superintendent had entered during a plumbing inspection and returned the kitchen table to clear the hallway. A broken ceiling sprinkler had soaked the sheet covering the mirror. Adrian pulled it away. At 2:17, he stood exactly where the second picture required, holding the first print. The camera flashed from beside the kitchen. Before the next night, Adrian unloaded the camera, wrapped it in black cloth, and locked it inside a steel document safe. He kept the only key on a cord around his neck. Kira watched by video call. At 2:17, something mechanical turned behind the safe door. Rollers clicked. Film scraped against metal. Adrian waited 10 minutes before opening it. The camera remained wrapped and pointed at the safe's rear wall. A new photograph rested on top. It showed Adrian kneeling before the open safe with the key in his hand. The perspective came from behind the steel door, looking outward. Worse, the camera itself appeared in Adrian's hands inside the photograph. Something else had occupied its place inside the safe and taken the picture. Kira enlarged the three prints under archival light. The images contained no edits, composite seams, or digital dots. Their chemistry matched instant film discontinued before Adrian was born. In the second photograph, the hallway mirror reflected the kitchen, the lamp, and a person standing behind the camera. The figure wore a dark wool coat with one torn shoulder. Adrian recognized it as his father's. Daniel had worn that coat the night he disappeared, but Adrian found something more disturbing. He should also have appeared in the mirror. He was standing directly opposite it, close enough to block half the glass. The photograph reflected every object in the hall except Adrian. Tomorrow's light behaved as if he were no longer in the room. The camera carried no manufacturer name, only a painted black panel beneath the film tray. Kira loosened it and exposed a brass plate, Vesper D24, Prototype 4, Lumen Archive Division. Adrian knew the name. His father had worked for Lumen as an optical engineer before the company dissolved. Public records described medical imaging and high-speed film. A restricted catalog in Adrian's archive listed something else, the Deferred Evidence Program. Its stated purpose was to record a crime scene before evidence could be disturbed. Vesper did not expose film when its shutter opened. It held the emulsion incomplete until the same place was photographed 24 hours later. The finished image then appeared at the earlier time. Adrian found 9 Vesper test reports hidden beneath his father's employee number. Every trial began with a picture appearing one day early. A fallen scaffold, a flooded laboratory, a smashed observation window. Engineers changed the scene after seeing each image, but the accident still occurred. Their interventions became the cause. Workers moved the scaffold to prevent a collapse, placing it beneath the beam that later failed. A technician drained a tank, overloading the valve that flooded the room. The report stopped calling the photographs predictions. Daniel wrote that each image acted like an instruction reality was forced to complete. In the margin of the final page, he added one sentence: "We are not seeing tomorrow. Tomorrow is being made to repay the picture." Kira opened an unused film cartridge inside a darkroom tent. Beneath the top sheet, she found fingerprints pressed into the chemical backing. They could only have been left before the cartridge was sealed at the factory. A police comparison identified Adrian within an hour. The loops, ridges, and spacing were exact. One mark did not belong. A pale line crossed the right thumbprint from knuckle to nail, interrupting ridges Adrian still possessed. It looked like scar tissue. Adrian examined his uninjured hand beneath a magnifier. The print came from him, but not from the hand he had yet. Then the camera ejected a fourth photograph. It showed bloodless white tape around Adrian's thumb and a screwdriver lying beneath the kitchen table. Adrian threw every screwdriver in the apartment into a trash chute and taped thick gloves over his hands. The next night, the camera began heating inside the safe. Smoke leaked from its hinges. Fearing a chemical fire, Adrian dragged the safe into the kitchen and struck its lock with a hammer. The handle broke. Kira slid a flat tool beneath the door to pry it open. The tool snapped, slicing through Adrian's glove from knuckle to nail. It was not a screwdriver, but when it fell beneath the table, its black handle and silver shaft matched the photograph perfectly. Kira wrapped his thumb in white tape. At 2:17, Adrian pressed the injured hand onto fresh film. The scar aligned with the print already waiting beneath it. The next print offered the clearest view of the photographer. The figure stood near the bedroom door, face hidden behind the raised camera, wearing Daniel Vale's torn wool coat. Adrian retrieved the coat from a sealed storage box. His mother had kept it after Daniel vanished. A strip was missing from the left shoulder. In the photograph, the figure's coat had the same tear, but the fabric looked newly ripped. Adrian checked the box again and found the garment gone. Wet footprints crossed the storage room floor and ended at a blank wall. At home, the hall mirror showed Adrian wearing his own jacket. For 1 second after he turned away, the reflection remained and raised the missing coat over its shoulders. Kira decoded Daniel's private notebooks. A Vesper print borrowed light before the light existed. To balance the exposure, someone had to stand at the photographed viewpoint 24 hours later, aim the same camera, and press the shutter. Daniel called this repayment the light debt. If the final exposure was completed, both moments remained connected. The picture existed yesterday because the photographer took it tomorrow. If no one completed it, the debt moved to the nearest living subject. The subject's reflected light vanished first. Mirrors stopped recording them. Photographs lost their face. Eventually, other people lost the memories those images had supported. The missing reflection was not a warning that Adrian might disappear. It was the first stage of the payment. One sealed case described a volunteer named Samuel Price. Vesper photographed him beside a laboratory window one day early. Samuel refused to recreate the image. Within 48 hours, his reflection stopped appearing in security footage. Family photographs developed white gaps where he had stood. His wife remembered being married but could not recall to whom. On the fourth day, Samuel entered a room under observation and never came out, although every door remained locked. Daniel's final note said Samuel had not been destroyed. His light continued one day ahead of the present, always reaching the camera too late for anyone beside him to see. The anonymous photographer in Adrian's pictures might be his father. It might also be what Adrian was already becoming. The fifth photograph emerged at 2:17 with its viewpoint at Adrian's bedroom threshold. It showed him asleep beneath a gray blanket. The camera rested on the nightstand, meaning the photographer held another one. Kira stood in the hall with one hand extended toward the bed. Her face was sharp, but the lower half of her body faded into the wallpaper. Adrian changed the locks and sealed the windows with numbered evidence tape. Kira took the only spare key and promised not to return until morning. The next night, Adrian woke to a flash beside the bed. Every seal remained intact. The nightstand was empty. In the hall, Kira's key turned slowly in the lock, although she was still speaking to him on the phone from across town. A final sheet pushed halfway from the camera and stopped. Its image developed over several hours instead of minutes. Adrian lay asleep in the center. Kira stood beside him, transparent from the waist down. Behind the lens, the photographer was barely more than a shadow. As the picture darkened, details vanished from Kira's life. Her name disappeared from the laboratory schedule. A framed photograph of her graduation showed an empty chair. Her sister called and asked Adrian why a stranger had answered Kira's phone. Kira still remembered herself, but her reflection flickered whenever the film changed. The light debt had moved to her because she had handled the cartridge and interrupted the sequence. If the final exposure remained unpaid, Kira would disappear first. Writing appeared beneath the final image, pressed into the emulsion from the other side. Put it where I found it. The letters matched Adrian's handwriting but leaned around the new scar on his thumb. A second line formed as he watched. Front door, Thursday, 6:11. Adrian checked the delivery camera from the night the package arrived. At 6:11, the porch had been empty. One frame later, the box existed. The video showed no courier, vehicle, or opening door. When Kira enhanced the reflection in the wet pavement, she found Adrian standing outside in Daniel's coat, holding the package. His face was older by several years. The future photographer who delivered the camera was not only Daniel, it was Adrian. Inside the coat's storage box, Adrian found a microcassette his mother had never noticed. Daniel's voice described Vesper's last unauthorized photograph. It showed 10-year-old Adrian beneath a collapsing hall light during a building fire. Daniel removed the fixture, evacuated the family, and believed he had prevented the scene. At the photographed hour, firefighters carried Adrian through the same hall. The damaged light fell anyway. Daniel stepped into the frame and took the blow meant for his son, then pressed Vesper's shutter. Adrian survived. Daniel vanished from the present. On the tape, he said the camera had not killed him. It had placed him one day beyond everyone else, where he could see each consequence but reach the present only through photographs that had already developed. Kira placed two synchronized cameras on opposite sides of the hall mirror. At 2:17, one feed advanced by a single frame. The mirror showed Saturday while the room remained Friday. Daniel stood in the reflected apartment, older than Adrian remembered and younger than 22 missing years should have made him. He pressed his hand to the glass. Adrian did the same. Their palms occupied the same place one day apart. Daniel mouthed that he had mailed Vesper backward because Adrian was the only person who might end the sequence. Then he pointed behind Adrian. In the mirrors tomorrow, Kira was no longer in the room. Her coat lay empty beside the bed. Daniel raised the camera and shook his head. He had not sent a rescue. He had sent a choice. Daniel's notes allowed only two outcomes. Adrian could destroy Vesper before the last frame completed, transferring the unpaid exposure entirely to Kira. By morning, no photograph, database, or person would remember her. Or Adrian could place the camera at the final viewpoint and press the shutter at 2:17. Kira's borrowed light would return, but Adrian would become the photographer one day ahead. He would disappear from reflections first, then photographs, then memory. Kira argued that he had no right to trade his life for hers. Adrian said the camera had already made her pay for his investigation. In the final print, a third line appeared beneath his future handwriting. I chose once before. You will choose the same. Adrian spent the final evening arranging the apartment to match every picture. The hall lamp returned to its place. The bedroom door remained half open. A glass of water waited beside the sink. He put Daniel's coat on and set Vesper inside the front door, the viewpoint of the first image. Kira connected the lab cameras and stood beside the bed exactly where the unfinished print showed her. At 2:16, every mirror in the apartment went black. Adrian could still see the room, but not himself. The camera's film counter changed from 0 to 1. At 2:17, the front door appeared to open into the same apartment one day later. Daniel waited on the other side, holding an identical camera. Adrian stepped through the doorway without moving his feet. The room around him shifted by one day. Kira froze like a figure inside an undeveloped photograph. Daniel led him through the apartment, stopping beside the kitchen, the safe, the hallway mirror, and the bedroom door. They were the exact positions of the anonymous photographer in every image. Adrian had believed something was approaching his bedroom. In truth, the photographs mapped the path he would take after leaving the present. Daniel explained that Vesper could send light backward but never a person. Adrian would spend tomorrow walking through angles yesterday had already received. To close the sequence, he had to take each photograph and finally mail the camera to his earlier self. At the bedroom threshold, Adrian aimed Vesper at the final frame. Kira stood beside the sleeping version of him, almost transparent. He called her name, but his voice reached the room as a faint mechanical click. Daniel told him the last shutter would restore her and seal Adrian beyond the present. Adrian looked into the hall mirror. For the first time, it showed both father and son standing one day too late. He pressed the shutter. White light filled the bedroom. Kira became solid. Adrian's sleeping body vanished from the bed. In the present, Kira woke on the floor holding a completed photograph. She remembered that someone had saved her, but the name escaped whenever she tried to say it. Daniel's coat lay empty near the door. For 3 weeks, Kira found traces of Adrian without understanding them. An extra coffee cup, a key that fit no door she remembered. Police files credited her with restorations she knew another person had completed. In old photographs, a hand sometimes rested on her shoulder while the space beside her remained blank. Then an unmarked package appeared outside her apartment at 6:11 p.m. Inside was Vesper, cold and unloaded. Beneath it, silver pencil formed a message. For Kira, when the hall light flickers twice. The camera ejected one final photograph. It showed Kira asleep tomorrow at 2:17 a.m., seen from inside her locked bedroom. A pale figure stood behind the lens in Daniel's coat. Beside him was another photographer with Adrian's scarred hand. Both were looking past Kira towards someone already standing inside the room.